Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Jeff Timmons, and you know I got soul.
And you know what? I gotta commend you for that because I was before doing this interview, I was researching on you, looking on YouTube, looking at Instagram. You still put in the work like you guys like first came out, like you're still pushing, and that's I
Well,
gotta
look,
give you guys so much props for that.
I appreciate you recognizing that, man. I mean, it never stops. I mean, no matter what level you get to, I was just talking to my wife about it. She's like, man, because I have a new single that came out and I
Yeah.
didn't expect it to do well. I was kind of throwing it out there so I could explore the dance lane for
Yeah.
other artists I'm working with. And just, it happens that the song's reacting pretty well and starting to, get a little bit of buzz. So, my wife Amanda's like, why are you doing all these radio interviews? And
Right.
I'm like, well, because I give everybody their due respect. I mean, Mariah Carey still does a ton of stuff with iHeart. She's one of the most prolific entertainers of all time. Michael Jackson back in the day was continuing to do radio shows. I mean, you got to be able to keep working the circuit because, first of all, it's good for the business. It's good to keep your chops up. And then, you never know what's going to happen, right? And if you have the time to do it, why not do it? Do it. So,
And I think throughout that process, you've learned a lot about just how the music industry is now with TikTok and all these new platforms.
yeah, it's been pretty interesting with the other platforms. Of course, I've got older kids and younger kids and everything in between. We have five between the two of us. So, I've seen all stages. I've seen traditional ways that we did it with when we were out, and now things that are breaking on TikTok, and you do these campaigns and all that other stuff to hopefully get things to go viral. But it's kind of a combination of both grassroots stuff and some of the new technology. So I'm learning and then also imparting some old school knowledge and sort of grassroots stuff into the younger artists that I'm working with.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about all the history, but let's touch on the single Lit. I had a chance to listen to it. Like you said, it's a little different for you. It's more of a dance driven type of record. Just talk about the record and how it came about.
Yeah, thanks for asking about it, Kyle. I mean, look, I ended up writing this song and producing this song with Pompeii. I was introduced to this guy Pompeii through a really old relationship with this guy named Larry Friday, who used to be James Brown's business manager. And he actually saw the first incarnation of 98 Degrees, which was me with a bunch of other guys from Ohio. And we ended up not being able to work together on that project because those guys quit. I got together with Nick and those guys afterwards, but I always kept in touch with, like we were talking about earlier, kept in touch with everybody throughout the years, and particularly him. And he had this artist / producer, Pompeii, who's featured on the song. And he was like, look, we got the song for a young guy. I think it might be good for you to like demo it up and sort of co-write it with Pompeii, co-produce it. So we passed it back and forth, and it was for a younger guy. Like you said, it's not like a 98 Degrees song, or not kind of in my sort of lane, being a dance song, but he liked it. And he was like, we're not touching it. Larry liked it. Pompeii liked it. We're not touching it. We're going to release it. And I'm like, well, if I release it, they're going to think I'm trying too hard, or I'm trying to reinvent myself, or but they're like, the song stands on its own. And then, we thought it was timely post-COVID, that it's kind of a fun time to do this kind of stuff. And like what you were talking about earlier with the different ways to get things out there virally, that, the song might catch on and be kind of fun. And that's exactly what we're getting. We're getting kind of a dose of people actually reacting to the song. Doesn't necessarily mean it's me from 98 Degrees. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's Pompeii, an emerging rapper / producer. It's just fun and light and all that good stuff. So thanks for asking me about it.
No, absolutely. So I got to ask this then. Now that the song's starting to take off, I know this wasn't kind of in your vision for this song to take off the way that it has. Do you have a what's next plan for this yet?
I'm starting to formulate. I mean, you kind of go with the flow. It's feast or famine in this business with regards to the music part of it. That's why I do a bunch of behind the scenes stuff. But yeah, we're starting to have fun with it. We're going to release a new set of remixes. Going to do a contest. Now going to do a music video. You got to do a music video, right? And put it on YouTube and cut it up and put it on the OTTs and all the social media platforms. So we're going to do that and just continue to have fun with it. I think that especially overseas, it's actually doing very well overseas in the UK, which is a surprise to me. But, I think we're just going to go with the flow and kind of ride the wave. And, I'm going to get behind it. If people are
Yeah.
liking it, of course, I'm going to take advantage of the situation and promote all the other things that I'm working on, different TV shows and different acts and, a sort of emerging a couple of independent record labels. So I'm going to utilize it as a promotional tool. I know that's boring. I should be like, yo, the song's the bomb. I can't wait for everybody to get lit. But I'm like, no, it draws attention to other projects, which my goal at the end of the day, at this point in my career, it's always nice to have songs out.
Yeah.
But I think at my point, at this point in my career, it's to launch other artists, give other people opportunities, and sort of take what I'm learning from all this to give people another chance to create and make money while creating, which is a sort of a novel thing that people don't really think about a whole lot, believe it or not.
No, and I think that's super cool. And I think once we touch on your history, we can see your passion for music, because you could easily just go down that nostalgia route, and not saying that you haven't, but you can tour with 98 Degrees for the rest of your life and be content with that. But it seems like you still want more. You still want to push. You want to break artists. You still want to be involved in the music industry.
Yeah, I mean, my passion is music. I mean, I left Ohio and drove to LA, and we didn't have this kind of stuff where you could get yourself out there remotely. We didn't have social media. We didn't have the internet. That's how old I am. All that stuff was, just starting to happen. The ability to connect and promote yourself digitally was not in existence. So you literally had to go and be in person. So for me, it's a passion for music and creating and being around other creative people and being fair to them and giving them an opportunity where they can make a living. I think that, those things are starting to emerge a lot more because technology has sort of taken the gatekeepers out of the mix a little bit. They're still there. They're still the bank, and they still have their powerful tools and relationships, but things like this and opportunities like we're talking about provide other people a chance to get out there and be creative. And certainly I love the process of creating and watching other people have success. I mean, it's one of my favorite things to be a part of.
Yeah. You're talking about today and how there's so much information accessible to us now. When you first started leaving Ohio, going to LA, how much knowledge did you have of the music industry?
I had none. I had no knowledge. I had my dad, who was a really great mentor and a good business person that could impart some knowledge about life. But other than that, it was what you watched on TV or read in a couple of books here and there. And those books don't tell you all the secrets, right? They don't tell you how you need to grease palms and kiss babies and shake hands and be available and grind and work. So, I think kind of maybe ignorance was bliss. That had I known how much effort goes into it, I might have done it I'm pretty ambitious and wanted to go for it anyway, but it is a daunting task that you have to continue to recreate yourself, and you have to continue to make yourself relevant, and you have to continue to evolve as technology and distribution and financing and the business of the music industry evolves. But I didn't know anything. I just knew I wanted to do it. I heard Boyz II Men on the radio, and I had been in different versions of quartets and had been drawn to music in a roundabout way, and certainly thought that it was a possibility, and didn't look at the numbers, which are daunting, that say, selling 1 million records, it's like a 1 in 55 million chance or something like that. Some crazy numbers that you don't want to even put into your subconscious mind. But I didn't know anything. That's a long form way to answer your question, but I kind of went in there, with blinders on, and I was like, we're going to do this no matter what it takes.
Right. No, and then bad contracts, of course, especially during your era when you guys first came out. I'm sure the contracts were kind of crazy then. Oh
man, it was crazy. I mean, a lot of it was just it's a wild time. It's hard to explain and quantify a lot of it. Yeah.
Fair enough. So, I mean, let's get into the history. You move out to LA with a couple of your buddies. You guys form this group, and they end up leaving that situation. It wasn't for them. You're in LA by yourself. You find Nick and the rest of those guys. Like, just take me through that timeline and just the challenges with that. Of you're in LA, and you're in a new city, and you got to just figure it all out.
In a big city. I mean, LA is the second biggest market in the country. And so, it was a lot different than where I'm from. I'm from a really small town in Ohio, like pretty much everybody knows everybody's business, and
Yeah.
you drive down 15 minutes to go to the Taco Bell parking lot to hang out with people, like old stuff that old people used to do to meet people. And sort of like the three main people that run all the businesses. And then you go to LA and it's massive, right? It's Hollywood. It's not like you think it is. Anyway, those guys that I was with, it was a little intimidating to them. And we got a lot of attention early on, which I think they were surprised about. We sang a cappella every place. We would get ushered into places like the Tonight Show or into the Disney lots and to sing for executives. We had a lot of attention from major labels right away. And I think that it, became very real very fast. It wasn't a joke that they could go phone home and tell, their girlfriend that's in college at, Kent State, oh my gosh, it's Jeff's going to get over it. And, we'll be home in, 3 weeks and, be able to go back to our normal jobs or finish school, which is totally respectable. No, I got out there and I'm like, look, we're onto something. This is going to work. Those guys quit. I got a job working security. I worked security for all the clubs. And in a roundabout way, I ended up meeting a guy that went to school with Nick. I heard Nick's voice on a tape.
Wow.
Audio tape. I had no idea what Nick looked like until I met him, until he showed up in LA. I mean, I couldn't Google him. I couldn't look his face up on the phone. I was like, what's this guy look like? I literally had a conversation with him and said, well, I've got James Brown's manager interested, and I have this producer, Paul Lawrence, and Gallon and Maury management, and there's a potential thing we could do with this label or that, Michael Jackson. And this guy's on the other end of the phone going, yeah. But I'm like, look, I promise you there are opportunities there. And then I'm like, but by the way, what do you look like? Kind of a weird question to ask, but you're trying to think of the imaging of the group. And he was like, wow, what are you asking? I said, well, what's your look? That's exactly what I asked him. He goes, well, if you're asking if I'm a good looking guy, I think so. It's a weird answer. I was like, look, doesn't matter. Love your voice. He came out to LA. He brought Justin out with him a little bit later. My brother was in the group for a short amount of time. The guy that introduced me to them was in the group a short amount of time. They quit, and then Drew came out, and then we sang backstage at a Boyz II Men concert, got discovered, and then we got signed to Motown. We met our then manager was Montell Jordan's road manager. Passed along the demo to Motown Records and got signed. So we got really very, very lucky.
No, and that's a super cool story. And when you guys were signed to Montell's manager and you saw Montell blowing up at that time, that must have made it really real for you guys. That could be us one day.
Oh my gosh, we were in the audience, and we were literally at Irvine Meadows, which ended up being like the Verizon Amphitheater in Southern California, and it's a big venue. And Boyz II Men, we're seeing them live in person and singing backstage at their concert, and we wanted to be like them, so it became it became crystallized for us. And Montell was on fire at that time, and we were like, wow, and he took us under his wing, and we were going to all these parties and events, and we hadn't been signed yet. And we looked, we thought we looked super cool. We were mixed with everybody, but it was a whirlwind. And if you look back, it's almost like, wow, it doesn't even seem like it could be a real story that could unfold, but it was very real to us, and ended up being very real. I mean, look, out of that, Nick's now world famous as a host, and Jessica Simpson came out of our camp, and Ashley Simpson was a part of our camp, and really these mega stars sort of came out of all that stuff that was just a thought and a dream for us when we were younger guys.
I gotta ask about signing to Motown. What were your expectations? Because it's different now. I think we have so much information that comes from you guys experiencing all of that. And then there's this thing about this generation now where no one has patience. They don't want to pay their dues. But during your time when you guys got signed, how was it like for you guys? Were you guys were blowing up overnight, or did you guys understand that it was a process?
No, we knew it was a process. I mean, we're kind of we're blue collar guys, and we're not sort of allergic to working. So we knew that there was going to be some hard work involved, and we knew just kind of the small amount of time we had spent together in LA, it was going to be a grind. And we had for us, there was no time limit on what it was going to take for us to be successful. A lot of people will say, all right, I'm going to do this for 3 months and I'm going to get another job. And they've kind of planned it out. But when you want to be a part of a big group or a band, or, do these dream jobs, you have to go in with no limitations on what you're going to do. And when we got signed to Motown, we were excited about it.
Yeah.
Motown is a predominantly Black label. It's a historically Black label. But for us, it was the dream label. We were so influenced by all those acts, like the Four Tops and the Temptations and Stevie Wonder and the Jacksons and all that stuff, that we were like, man, this will put a stamp of credibility on us. But with that came a whole different experience.
Right.
Because we were an all-white group and it was an urban label, they were trying to figure out different ways to break us, and creative ways that they thought would give us credibility, that would put the Motown stamp on us, but make us cool. And here's the thing, we weren't,
Right.
I was good for the other guys, but I'm not like the coolest guy on the planet. I just love music and love to entertain, and that whole steez isn't what my background is. So whatever, they were trying to package us as far as like having some sort of street credibility, or, being entrenched in the urban market, like that wasn't really sort of a legitimate way to market us. And people didn't believe it. They just liked the way we looked and liked the way we sounded. It was a pretty simple formula, right? So, it was a process for us, and it was a struggle for us in the beginning. And ultimately we kind of just stuck together, and we were like, well, look, I don't think, we didn't know that we fit in with the label the right way. And it had nothing to do with it being a Black-white thing, and more to do with them just trying to figure out how to market us and not do it the right way on an executive side of things. And so, ultimately we owe a lot to Andre Harrell, who's passed in the last year, for giving us the shot and understanding that we had something there. But we also had to stick together and go, all right, well, look, we're going to have to figure out a way to promote ourselves. Right. Fortunately for us, the radio department really understood that we had good records, we had good music, and that they could do something with that. They did a heck of a job of going out there and like pushing and promoting us, telling us where we needed to go. And eventually, we ended up breaking, but it was a combination of the opportunity with, that old school adage of hard work meets opportunity. And so the stroke of luck was there out of a culmination of all of those things at once, I think.
It's really interesting that you talk about the marketing strategy behind the group on the first album, because I spoke to Brian from Color Me Bad, and they had a similar experience too. The label didn't know what to do with them. They knew that the group was talented. They eventually pushed through and got some hits out, but it's just kind of interesting looking back and trying to figure out what the vision that the label initially had for you guys. I mean, it panned out in the end, but just the initial part of it.
Well, a lot of times label executives are former artists, right? So and artists tend to overthink. I mean, you're an entertainer yourself. You're doing a podcast, right? Yeah. So you're being seen. You have to consider marketing with your image and all this. And with artists, they have a tendency to like way overthink what some of the obvious things and drivers are for success. And so, a lot of these former artists, they try to create these really crafty ideas and these things. And, Color Me Bad, they pull it off. I mean, Brian can, pull off the urban thing. And although he's a, country boy, he had those kinds of chops vocally. They had a more multicultural look to their group. So I can understand them trying to sort of attack the market that way, the label. Yeah. But for us, we were just some guys that wanted to sing. We were like a barbershop
right.
Urban feel, so we didn't really understand it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times you overthink it. And at the end of the day, it's always about the song. It's always about the song first, right? So you have to get the song out there and figure out a way to get that out the most. And then you gotta make sure you look good and the video imaging looks good and all that stuff comes secondary. But without good music and good hits, none of the other stuff, it's kind of a moot point,
Yeah. What did artist development look like for you when you guys first came out? I know that's a foreign term to a lot of new people out here, but what was artist development for you guys?
That's a great question, man. I'm glad that, you've researched that. I mean, a lot of people think that, the labels will dump tons of money into the curation of artists. And if you watch some of these great documentaries with legends like Clive Davis and David Geffen that are on, the streaming services, you see that these guys went to a concert and they were enamored by this artist for whatever reason, you know, their performance ability or their music or their voice or whatever it is. They saw something and then they signed them, and then they would build them over the years. It would take a while. Like you put out a song and it would flop, and then they'd put them in the studio with somebody else and it would flop. And they sort of would, you know, sort of ride the wave with these artists that they believed in because they knew other people would feel what they feel. That wasn't the case with that. When we got signed, that was like just starting to go away.
Okay.
You know, those days had gone. You know, the labels were becoming more corporate, and obviously, when you're more corporate, it's about the bottom line and these numbers and all that stuff. So we had seen that going away. For us, we did get lucky because although we had a hit song on our first record, the album did not do very well. So someone else came in. It was a visionary from the movie industry. George Jackson replaced Andre Harrell at Motown, and he saw immediately, oh, wow, this is a pop group. We need to market it this way. We're going to put all our eggs in this basket. We're going to really focus on this demographic. And we got like a teen heartthrob group at our disposal. So I guess we sort of got lucky in having a second chance.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really exist today for young artists. I mean, you have to right away. You need to cut through. I mean, you have to look at the streams, and you know, which is there's a little bit too much weight that's sort of focused on streaming and those numbers. And you know, I think that there are people that get tons of streams and aren't stars still. You know, but you know, but you can have a little bit of streams and have a song on the radio and be touring and opening up and getting out there for your fans. And so I think that artist development, there are some people that are from that old school, like myself, that really believe in that. And if you have the luxury and tools at your disposal to develop artists and put them out there, and you can gamble on them because you believe in them, I think ultimately, if they're really, really good, they'll prevail, and they'll come out of the mix as, you know, these superstars that'll actually sell records and tour and make money and change the world.
Yeah, because I think the biggest problem right now is a label will sign an artist based on the success that they have on TikTok. And the expectation from the label is that they're a superstar right away. And it's just not the case. You see, because it's more than just the music. You got to see how their live show is. You got to see how they conduct interviews. And a lot of that, like I've had experience doing all of that, speaking with these new artists, and they're just not at the caliber yet. Like they don't know what media training is. And it's crazy to me.
Yeah, and you're hitting the nail right on the head. I mean, I'm not trying to sound like old fogey. You need to do it my way, right? I'm a student of the business and always have been. And for me, it's like it's a combination of all of those things. I mean, TikTok's a great vehicle. You see a number of records getting broke on TikTok, but you don't see a lot of stars coming out of TikTok.
Right.
And some of these superstars on TikTok, they have hundreds of millions of views on their stuff, but haven't really translated to where people are like, I want to see them in person. I want to know more about them in person. I want to go to their concert. They're not that great at entertaining because they've been sort of, developed in that form, right? They've curated their content to be, 30 seconds or a minute and a half long. And so they don't really know what it's like to get in front of a live audience, in front of people, react, like do interviews like this with people like yourself that are students of, just entertainment in general. So I think that there is a lot more to it. And, look, it's all like the Wild West right now, which is, to me, it's fortunate that people have these tools, but at the same time, you need to measure all of the other things, the tangible stuff where you go out and literally meet people in person, press the flesh, get experience with media training and all that stuff. I think that those are the criteria that you need to really, really break it and stay out there and be a legitimate, musician and recording artist.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, both artists and labels collectively, they don't really have a vision long-term of what something's going to be. Like, to Andre Harrell's credit, when he looked at you guys as, a white Jodeci. That was what his initial vision was. It didn't pan out that way, but, it was something that he thought of. And like, when I look back at your first album, and I just want to list out some of the people that worked on this album, because all of these people are like important people to the genre. You have Montell Jordan, Shep Crawford, Mario Winans, Sam Salter, Tricky Stewart, Robin Thicke, Kenny Green, Diane Warren, and Daryl Simmons. And I might be forgetting a couple, but that is a A-class producing list right there.
We had a good list of folks.
Yeah.
We were blessed to be with all of those folks. We had the track masters there too.
Wow.
We did stuff with them, and track masters had a ton of hits back in the day.
Yeah.
We did stuff with oh gosh, I mean, we had so many success. We did stuff with Sean and Dane, which had a bunch of hits. They had some stuff with All for One and a number of hits with some other artists. They were more in the pop lane.
Yeah.
We worked with Eddie F.
Wow.
Was another guy, like he's an old school R&B guy. I love that you mentioned Sam Salter. We worked with
Rest
this
in peace.
Tab that was part of Chris Stewart's camp, Tricky. Tab ended up writing a bunch of hits for other people. I mean, we got to learn. We had a crash course on really good production with really good people. So I mean, we were blessed, and that album that those folks were featured on wasn't one that ended up becoming a big. I mean, ultimately, it sold 1 million records. It went platinum, but I mean, that album should have been a really, really big seller. But again, not having the marketing sort of strategy sort of left us in the dark, and those folks didn't really get the credit that they deserve. Not that they needed it on our record,
right?
But those folks had a ton of success. I mean, I'm glad that you acknowledge them. I wouldn't trade that experience of working with them for anything in the world. I learned my chops in the studio with them. I figured out how things work with them. I mean, it was a really, really great experience for me.
Yeah, and I spoke to Robin Thicke probably about a couple of months ago about your guys' work together, and he told me he had so much fun writing for you guys. That was early on, Robin Thicke, but he told me he had such a blast.
Yeah, and Robin was another guy. Like, they couldn't figure out his lane. Like, he was an R&B guy, but he's a white guy, and even Andre signed him. Yeah. And I'm sure he probably told you this, to his label New America, that I think he was doing with Babyface at the time. Yeah. And Robin came out, and he didn't really hit right away. They couldn't figure out a way to market him. And, at the end of the day, it's just about the good songs. I mean, it doesn't have to be overthought. And always it was for them, it was like, what's the movie here? What's the movie? And for us, it was just like, just put us out there, let us go meet people and let us go sing. And that's what we ended up doing. And that's why we ended up, having some success.
Right. That's amazing. I think I read somewhere you guys also worked with Devontae Swing.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, wow. Devontae was in Rochester, New York at the time. We took a train from the city. We lived in New York City at the time when we got signed, right after we got signed. And we went and visited Devontae, and we didn't end up, putting any of the records out that he did. We did 2 with him, but we never finished them. It was kind of an interesting situation. He was up there and sort of, indisposed at the time, on and off. And we spent a little bit of time up there doing some pretty cool vibey stuff with him, but none of it sort of fit and integrated with what we were doing on the album.
Fair enough. So I guess with this whole album in its entirety, this debut album, super R&B heavy driven album, obviously you guys are super influenced by R&B at that time. Like, how true was that album to you guys and what you guys wanted to do?
Oh man, I think that identifies us. That's more along the lines than some of the other ones. And I don't want to take away from 98 Degrees and Rising, which was our big hit album, with Because of You, which is more of a pop song, and I Do, which is like a wedding anthem, and The Hardest Thing, which is also like a pop R&B, mid-tempo kind of classic sounding song. But that R&B vibe, the stuff we did with Mario Winans and all the stuff we did in the studio with Tricky and Sep, that was that moody R&B, harmony rich stuff. I mean, that's really more along the lanes of what our influences were at that time, for sure. I mean, we were definitely R&B influenced guys. So I'm Marvin Gaye. I mean, Luther Vandross. I mean, Freddie Jackson, Michael Jackson, all those guys that have all that skill. I mean, that was the stuff that we would, pop in and listen to in our apartment when we lived in Brooklyn. We would listen to all that stuff, and Jodeci, like you're talking about, and Boyz II Men, and Silk, and Shy, and all these groups that, we would look at and go, man, we want to be like them. And it wasn't even anything that had to do with any image or any of that stuff. It was all about the way they arranged their music and the vibe of the music. So I think that album, I'm very proud of that album. I mean, it's actually my favorite one. Outside the Christmas albums, the first album's my favorite one.
Right. No, that's amazing. And that's one of the reasons why I like referring to 98 Degrees as an R&B group as opposed to a boy band,
Totally.
because I mean
We
the
love
sound is
you.
different. Yeah, it's different than the other boy bands. Like you guys had a much more soulful sound, so it's like I wouldn't just box you guys in as being a boy band.
Well, I appreciate that. And we didn't even know what a boy band was.
Right.
The only thing that was kind of close to what we recognized as a boy band was New Kids on the Block, which were
Right.
to us, a lifetime before us. Although we ended up touring with them, and they're
Yeah.
great, and we totally respect them. But we didn't think we were anything close to that kind of a group. We didn't dance. We certainly don't have that skill set, and we never even thought about that would be something that we would have to implement into our show. We were just like,
Right.
oh, we're just going to croon. We're just going to sing these love songs and put a lot of soul and flavor into it. And so we were really, really densely focused in the R&B sort of vibe. And it wasn't until like Backstreet and NSYNC started emerging that we're going, oh, well, maybe we should probably, explore this sort of lane a little bit more with our sound so that we can translate to a different audience.
Right. Fast forward a little bit to the second album, and even before that, I mean, I guess take me through the timeline. Of course, you guys had the Stevie Wonder record. That was a big record, and then that kind of like led into the second album. And maybe my timeline is kind of off there, but just take me through that.
No, you've done your homework. You're exactly right. I mean,
Yeah.
we were sort of teetering on the first album, thinking, well, are we still going to have a career? What are we going to do? And we
Right.
went up into Canada, and we, drove a Winnebago up there, and literally passed out swag at Backstreet Boys concert. And Canada embraced us and broke us. We ended up breaking that first album in Canada, then went to Southeast Asia. We went wherever they would accept the music, and we broke in all those places. And what the label was doing was saying, hey, you know what, these guys are selling music. Like they're actually translating. They are getting fan bases in other countries. That's when we decided, like, in the interim, what are we going to do? Met with, the folks from Disney about the Mulan soundtrack. I had the fortunate opportunity to work with Stevie Wonder on that. Released that kind of while we were, releasing the second album, which was a lot more pop driven and more of a mainstream sort of embodiment of work. And that's all those really mainstream places like ABC, Disney, Nickelodeon. We started doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when we really started to kind of break. We did the Nickelodeon All That tour, which had Keenan and Kel and Nick Cannon and Monica on it. And
Right.
and so that kind of stuff really will solidify you in the public's eye. So we did that, and the second album came out, did very, very well. Had 3 or 4 singles on it that made a lot of noise, and then we just started going from there.
How did that second album feed you guys creatively? Because, like you said, it's a little more poppy, but it still had R&B vibes to it. So I don't think it was too much of a shift.
No, it wasn't that drastic, but
Yeah.
it was like, okay, you can accept pop beats, you can work with pop producers. We ended up
Right.
working with Anders Bagge and Antor Birgisson quite a bit. They did a lot of the songs on that record. There was sort of a bit of a vibe with them. We always write. We wrote a couple of songs on the first album, wrote
Right.
more on the second album. The creative process for us was cool. It was still discovering what that perfect combination of what's the public gonna like and
Right.
match what we like, because as an artist, like in the studio, I can sit here and do like super R&B stuff all day long, or just do vocal stacks, and
Right.
like, there's no place to like exploit it aside from like your social media. So you
Yeah.
have to like adapt and change to some of those things that make sense, and also with current trend wise. So we were creative in the process, and it wasn't as overthought like as some people would think. We just
Yeah.
songs, recorded them, wrote them, recorded them, and then we released them, and went and tour supported and did all that stuff. For every single that we released, we would go do all the radio stuff and press the flesh and do the grassroots stuff and
Right.
make ourselves available to the fans in person.
Yeah, because I would say that the first album sort of fit more of that Jodeci traditional R&B vibe. Once you got to the second album, it kind of mirrored what Boyz II Men was kind of doing at that time too. It was more soulful. a little bit more poppy, but a song like "If She Only Knew," like I could see Boyz II Men singing a record like that, and that was a great song.
I think a lot of those songs. I mean, Boyz II
Yeah,
Men could do any of those songs. I mean,
yeah,
that like they would. I do. They would kill. I mean,
yeah.
they could do the hardest thing. Invisible Man from the first album, I think, was pitched to Boyz II Men. Believe it or not.
Oh wow.
But you know, I think all of those things. If She Only Knew, boy, I would love to hear Boyz II Men do a version of that song. I mean, they're fantastic, and you know, there's no secret how I feel about those guys and
Right.
their ability. But yeah, I mean, I think it just sort of defined us as a group, and we were like, oh, this is the sort of vibe we're gonna have with it, and I think people, you know, knew it was true to what we were becoming, and it also fit in with the time.
Yeah. And with that comes a 4-time platinum album with the second album, numerous hits. Like I don't think people realize just how big it is to sell that many records, like physical copies, especially during that era. Like what was that time like for
It
you?
was crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's as crazy or crazier than you would think. When you're talking about selling, like we said, now it's like it's not an anomaly for somebody to have 100 million views on something.
Right.
But you don't know if those are real, or you know, if those people, you know, I sit here with my youngest daughter and she flips through these influencers, but she's not engaged with them. Like she doesn't. When you're selling physical copies, when people are walking in and you're selling 5 million copies of an album, people
Right.
are literally walking into a store to find your album and walk up and purchase it. That means that you've done something, you've connected with them in a way. And for us to have that kind of audience and be able to see those people in person, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, overnight, literally, we went from going and buying our own albums, so
Right.
it shows up on SoundScan, to, you know, not being able to get out of our tour bus because, you know, we went on TRL, and then it was overnight, like crazy. Like all of a sudden you can't go anywhere, and you know, it's like constantly people following you around, which we want. I mean, that's what we
Right.
wanted. But when it actually happens, after you're going, wow, when's this going to happen? Is this ever going to happen? Are we ever going to make it? And then all of a sudden people are like, oh my God, there it is. And they're screaming or crying hysterically. You're going, oh my God, why are you crying? Well, it's just because, you know, the music has translated or made that impact, and the marketing has unfolded in the right way. And so, you know, I don't think we knew what to expect.
Right.
I think we were ready for it. We wanted it. We didn't know what to expect. And you never quite get used to that,
Right.
that sort of reaction to you. You're like, well, I'm just a person that wanted to be famous. We're not mad. But at the same time, you're like, wow, it's just, it sometimes can be overwhelming, you know?
Yeah. Jeff, let me ask you this. This is a conversation I have with a lot of artists who have sold a lot of records just like you have. So that album is multi-platinum, millions of albums sold. Where are those fans today? I know it might be a little different for you because you guys go on those nostalgia tours and you see them there, but is it realistic to expect those people to follow your new music, or like just how do you kind of handle
Well,
that?
we've been lucky, man. It's a good
Yeah.
question, because it's always about timing, right?
Yeah.
So there was a time, and music changes a lot, and it more so in the United States than it does in the whole world. Like
Yeah.
it's always cyclical, and styles come and go. And our style went out of style. Like when you know, the radio programmers and the labels decide that they're sick of this style,
Right.
you know, they're like, they're not going to push it or put money behind it anymore. So literally it was like turning off a water faucet with us. Like
Yeah.
we were on fire, and then all of a sudden, you know, there was other groups like O-Town and Youngstown, and you
Yes.
know, this one and that one and the other one. And O-Town's great.
Yeah.
But I mean, when those things started happening, it's sort of like people started looking at us as going, oh my gosh, it's just a factory. That's it. And then when that happens and the coolness factor goes away, they kind of shut off. So there was a period there where it wasn't necessarily in vogue. Nick, obviously, and Justin Timberlake, those guys went out and did their own thing in different ways.
Yeah.
Were able to transcend, you know, sort of the way the backlash goes with different genres of pop music, right? But it took a while for our fans they kind of went away. They were mostly young girls, right? And teenage girls, and sometimes preteen girls that went through their different stages. And then you talked about nostalgia. Then it came back and they're like, oh my gosh, this means everything to us, this era of pop,
Yeah.
right? And it's not because we're super cool or the music was that just earth-shatteringly amazing, but it was part of a time that was a formative time in their lives where they met
Right.
their best friends, or they met their future husbands, or had boyfriends or breakups, or death in the family, that a song brought them together, that they kind of relate to an important part in their personal history. And for me, when we put this group together, we never thought that that was what was going to happen.
Right.
So they're there for us. I mean, and they come to the shows and they buy the tickets and they bring their kids and they introduce other people to the music. So for us, we're very fortunate that they're there and still coming out, and we never take it for granted. We never did, and we don't today either. But it's nice to see that they're back,
Right.
and excited about us and buying tickets and excited about our other projects and all that stuff.
Right. I want to talk more about that once we get later into the timeline of 98 Degrees, but onto the third album. I guess at that time, music had started to shift a little bit. You guys still did really well on that album, but how tough was it to make that album? Because I remember when NSYNC dropped their third album, Justin Timberlake had an interview and he said he just didn't know what direction to go in after that because he saw the shift happening. Like, what was it like for you guys?
We could feel it. We could feel it shifting. And at that time, too, we were really, really popular.
Yeah.
And so getting us on the same page, there were a lot of people in different lanes and different areas talking about, oh, you need to come do this show. And, you probably should explore a solo career, or you should, this is the style you need. All of a sudden, when you're generating a bunch of cash, people all of a sudden they come in and they have the proper formula for you, right? Or they know the ingredients. And so, and being a bunch of guys that were really young and not experienced in the business, a lot of that can be distracting. So with that album, I like that album and I'm very proud of it. I just think that we were sort of pulled in different directions on that one. We recorded and wrote a lot of stuff on that album that we're very proud of it, but it was different. It was starting to shift a little bit differently. And then we also had some up-tempo stuff on it. Oh, you guys have to dance, NSYNC's, selling 1 million, 2 million records in the first week. Backstreet selling 1 million records in the first week. You guys are just like them. So you need to sell this amount. So you need to have some dance songs on there. And look, a lot of that stuff didn't fit with what our fans expected. Some of the dance songs, but now years later, those songs are cool, right? Like dance songs that we love performing in concerts. But I just think that with that one, it was a little tough. That was one of them that I think we sort of were like overthinking a bit on the album, but still a lot of good jams on the record. I mean, I'm really proud of a lot of them. Unfortunately, you didn't hear a lot of them come out as singles. So there's one with Richard Marx that was a really good one. I mean, Nick wrote a lot of really great material on that record.
Right. I'm always curious to know, like, because there was that long hiatus that 98 Degrees had from that album to 2.0. Would you have been content as, a founder of 98 Degree if you guys had just left it off with that third album?
Well, I'm never content. I mean, I want to have this place adorned with plaques at all times,
Right.
You're never content. I think you're always trying to evolve and to be the best. I mean, and not everybody's like that. I'm extremely driven, so I want to always outdo the last one, which is a really tough. Yeah. It's a tall order in any business, but particularly the entertainment business, and really in particular the music business. So no, I absolutely was not satisfied with that. I was disappointed we didn't sell. We only sold 500,000 records in the first week. And that was like, people were like, damn, you guys. Nowadays, people will be like, chanting from the rooftops. 500,000 records, period, but let alone the first week. So for us, it was, we should be enjoying it. We should have been enjoying it. And reveling in it. But no. I mean, I think that there's always a way to get better as an artist or as a creator, as a businessman. So sadly, and probably my wife hates me, but I'm never quite satisfied. I'm pleased. I'm honored. I feel blessed, lucky, always express gratitude for the opportunity. But for me personally, I'm always trying to outdo the last thing or do something better. And I don't know why that is. And perhaps unhealthy. But I don't know how to operate another way. So
Fair
no,
enough.
I wanted to go record another one right away and outsell that one, so.
Fair enough. Outside of the success of the three albums that you guys put out, I want to highlight a couple more things here. The Mariah Carey and Joe record, Thank God I Found You. That's a #1 hit. Big, big song. Like, just take me back to making that one with them.
Oh man, are you kidding? It's like an honor. First of all, I'm a huge Mariah Carey fan, and I'm a massive Joe fan. Like,
Yeah.
I love Joe.
Yeah.
I was on to Joe before his big album came out. Like,
Yeah.
the first one came out and wasn't very popular, and then he had his, all the I Want to Know and all those jams.
Yeah.
But I was on to Joe and loved his voice. The second I heard there was an opportunity to jump on a song, one with Mariah Carey, I was like, whatever it is.
Right.
Yes. And then with Joe, absolutely. And then to do it with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis.
Right.
Between Babyface and Jimmy Jam, they did all, a lot of the Boyz II Men hits. So that was like a dream for me. It was an honor. Of course, it went #1. But again, we're critical in that, we're just kind of on it a little bit. It's not really our song. So
Right.
we don't count it. We don't count it as the #1 song for us. But it did go #1, and it was a complete honor to be with her. She was gracious and awesome. Joe was amazing. And I couldn't be happier. Look, you can't complain when a record you're featured on goes #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. So
Right. No, that's amazing. And then the second thing I got to commend you on, same thing with Mariah, these Christmas albums, especially that first one, that's like a staple for a lot of Christmas lovers. Like, just the impact of that Christmas album. I know you guys went on tour not too long ago for that, just to celebrate Christmas. Like, how important is that album to your guys' career?
Well, that first Christmas album is my favorite album. So it's
Yeah.
a toss up between, it always gets close between the very first one you had mentioned, the first studio album, and the Christmas album. I like the first Christmas album because we're able to show off our wares, right?
Yeah.
And it's an album that, the arrangements on that album are just incredible. And, we played a hand in part of it, but it was mostly Anders Bagge and Anton Birgerson that they put that album together. There's real orchestration on it. Of course, at that time, no matter what we came out with, it could be, the Boston Pops joining us with something, and critics would pan it. But, look, the sales speak for itself, right? It went
Right.
double platinum. People still talk about it, like you said, as their favorite album. I'm honored to be on that album. And
Right.
I'm so proud of it. My brother and his wife, they'll text me every year about that
Right.
album, how they're listening to it. It's just sometimes stuff transcends your own ability or your awareness and what your input is. And I just think that whole embodiment of work with that record is something that I will always cherish being involved with. We were dead tired when we made that album. I mean,
Right.
we've been touring for several years, and we recorded in July in LA. And, it's hard to get into the Christmas spirit, but as it was coming together, we're like, we think there's something special here. And so, we love it. And it's always nice hearing people, wow, I don't know the rest of your stuff, but I have your Christmas album. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing that one is one that sort of transcends all the rest of them.
Right. No, that's an amazing album. And then we fast forward, 98 Degrees goes on their hiatus. You put out your solo album. And then I know you had that reality TV show with a couple of other boy band members. Brian Michael Cox, who is he's a great friend of ours. He was just talking to us about the work that you guys all did together. Not a lot came out of that era, but just take me back to that era for yourself and where you were at.
Well, it was a tough era because,
Yeah.
look, you're not cool anymore, right? So we're
Yeah.
trying to figure out ways to get music out there. I was doing a ton of behind the scenes stuff, like a lot of production for other people, which I love. I mean, that's being in the studio is one of my favorite things, but
Yeah.
I've been approached to be on this show, and it's sort of, I mean, gosh, I guess now with Backsync and the thing ATC,
Right.
Chris and the after party that they did here in Vegas, it's in vogue for all the groups to mix and mash.
Yeah.
But at that time, it almost seemed like it was a grab for attention for press. So
Yeah.
I was really reluctant. I didn't want to do the show, and I frankly, at that time in my life, could have used a boost, with publicity and an opportunity, and was a father to 2 young kids at the time. So I was hoping it would work, but I kind of envisioned that at that time, and still today, but at that time particularly, they wanted to exploit you on reality TV in not a good light, right? And so I reluctantly joined the cast, but I would not trade, not to sound like a guy that's always half glass full.
Right.
I love the experience. I mean, I loved being with Brian. I loved being with Rich, and Chris and I are dear friends today from that experience, because they put us through the gauntlet on it. They were trying to embarrass us and not make us look good, but bottom line is we created good music. We
Right.
Cox, right? I mean, and that was great. And we had a great experience together. And at the time, the show didn't do well. They didn't really know how to frame it. Instead of that, they should have filmed us behind the scenes, what we did.
Right.
All we did was party, have a good time. You know what I mean? It was a blast. It was like basically Jersey Shore up in there, but they wanted to make it look like misery.
Yeah.
And, our fan bases didn't want to see that. They wanted to see us like they saw us when they were buying our concert tickets or buying our music. They want to see us in a positive light. So it didn't work with Mission Man Band was the name of the show. Yeah. But the experience was invaluable for me. And then it took me outside of my comfort zone. Being outside of your comfort zone isn't fun at the time. But the growth that you experience afterwards you can't put a price tag on it. So I loved it.
Yeah. And it's funny that the label, the network, they wanted a bunch of drama, but instead what they got were just four guys that wanted to make music.
That's right. And we screwed off. I mean, there's more stuff of us like bitching and complaining to them the whole time for them putting us in bad predicaments. They should have just filmed it. They should have just filmed us yelling at them all the time, or having girls over at Chris's house, right, and partying, and all that stuff would have made much better TV. And then you know what? We could have been releasing music with good vibes behind it, a good machine. But look, it was another case of a bunch of executives thinking what they thought the public would want to see, and it just didn't work, right? The ratings will always tell you, the record sales will always tell you what's translating and what's not.
Right. Let's fast forward 2.0, 98 Degrees comeback album. You guys released this on E1. How much input did you guys have on the creative part of the album? Because I'll be honest, when I heard this album, and I have to understand that at that time, pop music and R&B music, they were both in like really weird stages. R&B was starting to become more dance driven. Pop was already dance driven. But then 98 Degrees, like I said, it's a soulful group. So you guys still want to maintain the harmonies, still want to maintain the stacks. Like, how challenging was it to make that album?
For us, I mean, look, it was weird because we were apart for so long, and then we came back together. I actually love that album. There's like gems on that album. I mean, there's a Neo song on that album.
I love the Neo song. That's the one I love.
Man.
Yep.
That's a jam. There just wasn't a lane for that music. You're exactly right. It was mostly like Chris Brown dance stuff, and Usher's dance stuff, and then it was a bunch of pop, like Taylor Swift kind of pop stuff, which is all amazing stuff. But there was absolutely nothing like this on the radio. At that particular time, I think that one's one of our stronger albums. I mean, we did a cover of Bruno Mars song that's big falsetto jam. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff there's a song called Girls Night Out that's a jam. It's a dance song on there that's pretty good. Microphone, we like that one. It's just a cool song, but we picked that one because we thought it would be a kind of common ground at that particular time. It's got some innuendo in it. We caught a bunch of flack for that, but really it wasn't. We just liked the song. We thought it was a jam. So with that album, it was a good experience, us getting back in the studio, and technology had changed. How you're recording records had changed quite a bit. And so it was a good experience for us getting in there and doing it. But that was one of my top favorite ones too. And a lot of fans kind of put that one up there too. Right. I'm like, what about 2.0? No one ever talks about that one. I'm like, it's because nobody really promoted it. It came in an awkward, circa 2013 or 2012 or whenever it was. I think if we released it now, a lot of those songs could come out, and perform well. So.
Right. No, that's exactly it. Around that time, that's right before streaming happens. That's when people are still illegally downloading music. And at that time, it's like, it was impossible at that time to really put out your music and have it sell.
Hey, I'm glad you understand that, because a lot of people won't know that. You know,
Yeah.
they're going to go, well, they put out an album and it just flopped, right?
Yeah.
No, I mean, there are a lot of elements that go into that equation, and sometimes we do put stuff out that's not good, right?
Right.
But for the most part, you know, we kind of calculated that album, we felt proud of it, and then look, at the same time, no knock on E1, whoever the staff was, they just didn't, a lot of times when someone sees a group like 98 Degrees and sees these huge numbers of albums you've sold, they just assume it's going to be like a turnkey thing. All I need to do is go say I'm a part of it and it's going to sell. No, you need to put a marketing plan together. You need to work it. You need to put some angles into how you're going to promote it. And we really didn't have a whole lot of support on that one, unfortunately. But I'm glad you get it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was a different time, and it still is a different time. So with this new single, Lit, I know 90 Degrees is still putting out music. Like, how do you kind of measure success now? Because the numbers are not going to be what they used to be. It's inevitable. It's just different platforms, different types of metrics. You're still able to perform, and the fans are going to love the old songs, and you hope that they connect with the new records as well. Like, how are you kind of measuring all of this now?
Success for me is that we're still around, right?
Yeah.
We still sell concert tickets. We still have the ability and interest from people for us to record music and to be in front of young people like yourself. I mean, you obviously must love the lane in the R&B world and the music that you talk about. I mean, and to have an opportunity to talk to you, you're going to end up talking to other people, right? And it might not even be about us, but the fact that you have enough energy and time to do this research and you care about it, that's success to me at this point. It's not about, I live in a beautiful house, my family's taken care of, I'm able to create music and do unscripted TV production and produce music for other people and give other people opportunities. So success for me is just, hearing about people like yourself and other young people coming into the music business and have an opportunity to create and afford them some experience and some insight on it. And if it helps them, circumvent and get away from some of the low lows, I'm happy with that.
Man, that's amazing, Jeff. That's all that I really had for you. Amazing interview, amazing story. And I forgot to bring up, I'm really good friends with Soul Shock and Carlin.
Oh my God.
They had mentioned that you guys recorded a record that eventually went to Silk. I don't know if you remember this record. I don't remember the title off the top of my head. I'll email you.
Oh my God, you got to find out which one that is.
Yeah.
I don't know which record that is. I mean, literally, there's an artist that I'm working with right now that I'm about to get signed that just did a song with Soul Shock and Carlin.
Wow, that's amazing.
It was Harley. I mean, I am a huge fan of those guys.
Yes.
So we did a lot of the 2.0 stuff with those guys, and Darren Sharp was another guy that I don't know if you've ever talked to Darren. Darren's a really prolific songwriter and producer and a talented guy in his own respect. So I love those guys. Please tell them hello. I mean, they're the best.
Yeah, absolutely. But Jeff, back to you. I've gone through the history. We know what you're doing now. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Hey, man, no, I mean, you covered it all. I really appreciate you taking the time and reaching out. And sorry it took me so long to get back. I've been running around like crazy, as I'm happy about. But anyway, man, thanks for the time and continued success to you. I can't wait to see what's next for you. And please keep in touch with me.